Hello, friends, and welcome to Lesson 1 of Unit 1 of the course Business Environment and Indian Economy. I'm Gurdeepak, and I'll be taking up the Lesson 1 today. As we had discussed during the introduction to the course, that this course will be divided into 4 units. Unit 1 and Unit 2 are dedicated to the environment side, that is the business environment. In Unit 1, the business, political, and economic environment which affects the business will be discussed. In Unit 2, we'll talk about the legal environment, ecological environment, technological, and the international environment. In Unit 3, we'll talk about Indian economy, and within Indian economy, we'll talk about the public sector and the role of consumer and how the consumer is affected by the different policies of the government. Unit 4 specifically will be on unemployment and development strategies. And poverty is one of the parameters that will be discussed in detail in Unit 4. So let me start with Unit 1 and Lesson 1. In Lesson 1, we'll have an overview of business environment. The learning outcomes for this lesson: what is business environment? We need to understand when we say business environment, what we mean by that. Number 2 is the components of business environment. Number 3, external and internal environment. And then within external environment, we'll discuss the macro and micro environment. And we'll take up a small case study in the end. This book I shall be referring from time to time for the case studies. So when we talk about business environment, I'll give you a few seconds. You can think of, when I say business environment, what do you think business environment is? What do you mean by business environment? So what this word or 2 words, business environment, mean to you? Now, today if I want to go to any place, for example, I want to go to the hill stations, although because of COVID we cannot go anywhere, but I decide to go somewhere. So what I'll do, I'll try to find out how is the climate there, whether it is hot or cold. Accordingly, I'll pack my clothing. Then I'll see how I can reach there, what is the mode of transportation. And number 3, whether I'll get the connectivity to my network or the ISP which I am using, and so on and so forth. The food and whether the infrastructure over there is good enough for me to stay for a longer time. So all these things. So why I'm doing it? Because I want that when I'm there, I'm in comfort. I don't feel that I've come to the wrong place. So I need to collect all that information. And some of that information it is in my control. Like if I know it is cold there, I can pack some woolens. But once I'm there, some natural disaster has come. I don't have any control over that. So there are certain things which you can control, there are certain things which you can't control. Now, when we talk about the environment, we are just focusing on environment, keeping the business in mind. So everything revolves around the business. So if I have to define business environment, I would say we are talking about those aspects of the surroundings which influence the functioning of my business. Anything that affects my business or functioning of my business, I would like to put that in the environment. Second is, one aspect is that what is that affects my business, and second is that based on that environment, right, what changes I should make and what I need to adapt in that changing environment so that my business is sustainable and I can grow my business. So today the biggest challenge in this pandemic is how can I make my business pandemic proof? So this environment of pandemic is not in our control, but we need to look at that how it is affecting my business and how I can adapt to the changing scenario which has come because of the pandemic. So when we talk about components of business environment can be divided into two parts. One is internal, one is external. As I said earlier, the parameter which divides business environment into internal or external is the control. For internal business environment, you have full control. And for the external environment, you have very less control or almost no control. Let us look at that. When we talk about the internal environment, what I mean by internal environment, it is the work culture within my organization. That is, I have full control over that. The managerial policies which I make to run the business, that comes under internal environment. Financial resources like the working capital to run the show, so that is internal environment. The human resources, the people who are working for my organization, the recruitment, selection, training, and recruiting new staff, new skilled force for my company, that comes under internal environment. I also set the objectives of my business, so that is under my control. What sort of research and development environment I have to create, so that is what is in my control. So that is why I put that under internal business environment. So when we talk about the external environment, it can be divided into micro and macro. So if I talk of micro, I have some control, like over my suppliers who are supplying maybe the raw material to my organization, to my company, the customer. So I have some control. I can influence the customer to some extent, but I don't have the full control. My competitors. So by going for some aggressive promotional policies or changing the price, I can influence, I can change that environment a little bit in the competitive market, but I don't have the full control. The public at large, I don't have the full control. Some control. Media, I can control to some extent where my product is involved, and that too, which I think I have control, but I may not have that much control over that. Similarly, the market intermediaries. So if you talk of a supply chain, so there are a lot of people in between the supply chain, because there are retailers, then wholesalers, then the producer, then the end consumer. So there are a lot of intermediaries from the producer to the consumer. So I have some influence over that. So when we talk of the macro environment, so we have like the economic environment, the political environment, the technological environment, the socio-cultural environment, the human resources environment, that is what sort of resources are available around my business, where I'm running the business in that location. The financial resources, this we are talking about the economic condition of the country or of the state or of the region. If I'm talking of the country, the GDP of the country, the natural environment, that is the natural resources availability. So all these are macro environment where I don't have any control or much control. So even if I have some control, it is iota in the sea of control. If I talk of political environment and I go into the depth of that, so of course, if the government is not stable in that country and there is a lot of unrest, like in Belarus, in Europe, what is happening is, so no business can survive because there is a lot of unrest in that country. So if we look at the neighboring countries around India, so there are certain countries which are suffering because there is no stable government there. And also the environment has to be very dynamic. That means it has to be pro-business. That means they are trying to ask the business houses to grow more, to work along with the government through some good policies which are in favor of the business. Second is the center-state relationship. So For example, if a particular party is in power and they are at the center, then the states which are run by the opposition parties, then what sort of relationship they have. Similarly, some states have very good relation with the center because the federal policy or the central policies, there are certain things which in terms of funding, in terms of infrastructure, that comes to the states from the center. So what sort of relationship they have. There are certain taxes which are central, so over which state has no control. So what sort of relationship they have is important to understand to run the business which comes into the political environment. So some of the opposition parties, they may support the government on certain decisions, but for certain other things they may not support. So what the opposition parties think about the businesses of the country, so which all business areas they support, which all business areas they don't support. The biggest example was of Nano, which went to one state where they were unable to start their production factory for the nano cars. Then they had to move to the other one because there was a lot of problems and the state government was not able to solve those. Similarly, the relation of the government with other countries, because you are not working in isolation, you import, you export, you are always looking for some investment from other countries. So what sort of relations the government of that country is having with the other countries and the neighboring countries, like we have a SARC, which is a cooperation between the South Asian countries. Then, similarly, with other developing or developed nations. For example, today in this COVID-19 scenario, we are working with UK and Russia for the vaccine. So what sort of relation you have with them so that you are able to boost the business within your country and help the business houses? As we had discussed this during the introduction to the course, India has moved in 2008 from 132nd rank to 77th rank in 2019. So it has improved that position in terms of ease of doing business. And I asked you which are the top 10 countries in the world where ease of doing business is one parameter because of which all business houses are going there. So number one is New Zealand, Singapore, Denmark, Hong Kong, Korea, Georgia, like this Norway, US is at 8, UK is at 9. So these are the top 10 countries which has the ease of doing business. So this data is from 2017, 2018. So that is what business friendly environment the businesses look at. So let me take a case study towards the end. So I'll be asking you a few questions. Please take out your notebook and pen and write the answers. Now, we are not talking about ease of doing business here. We are talking about the investment destinations. So ease of doing business, you saw small countries with very less population. So they are doing well because that is the source of revenue, because the business houses come to their country. That is how they have their GDP growing there. But when we talk about investment destinations, they are looking for big customer base. A lot of people, density of population has to be very high, and there should be good income level in those areas. So, which you think are the top 5 investment destinations in the world? So that is question number one. Question number two, where India stands in these investment destinations. Does India come in the first 5 or not? So you need to tell me why has India moved up? As you saw in the ease of doing business, similarly in the investment destinations, India is becoming a priority with many countries now. Where should be the focus? That is, from the Indian perspective, what the Indian government should do so that it can move up in this investment destination ladder. What significant reforms India has already taken, and which all reforms one should be working for to have a better investment destination rank. So if we look at the top five destinations, number one is India, number two is China, then Southeast Asia, and then Brazil, and then number five is North America. Even if you look at the infection rate today of COVID 19, you will see because of density of population. So again, it is US is number one, Brazil was number two, but now India has overtaken and it is at number two, and then at number three is India. So same way because of the customer base and India has opened up to the world and has come out with some good policies because of which it has become the investment destination. So why has India moved up the rankings? Because it has provided a stable government and it has come out with some policy framework which is at the macro level and which is for long term and is stable, which has given the stabilized, what do you say, environment to the outside world. Second is, as I said earlier, stable political and social environment which it has created, and it has come out with a very good. We may be discussing later in maybe unit three, is foreign direct investment policy, and of course we have come out with some good measures to make the ease of doing business more preferable. Where does the government need to pay attention? That was my next question. So it has to improve the infrastructure in terms of, for example, the connectivity, in terms of the general road work, in terms of the informal sector becoming part of formal sector. So what sort of infrastructure is needed for that? Second is enhance ease of doing business. So still we have to work on ease of doing business. What all things, how we can remove the duplication of licenses and how we can make it single window system for anyone to come and run the business in India. So simplify the labor laws. I would always say that the informal sector of labor is not under some good framework. So we need to make it more formal. That means in terms of the policies which we need to lay out for that informal sector. Number five is we need to implement more of the economic reforms, especially with COVID 19. Now the scenario has changed. So you need to come out with very aggressive reforms in the economic sector. So how the outlook for 2020 has changed. So from 2014 to 2015, if you look, this was a survey done and the respondents are the countries outside India. So 29 countries were saying that India is amongst the top three manufacturing destinations, whereas in 2015, 37 countries said that. So top three manufacturing destinations. So again from 23 to 35, and then from nine countries to 21 countries are now regional global hub for operations. So it is becoming the regional hub. For example, if I say Asia Pacific, so it is becoming that. The last one is which are the most significant reforms that we need to do, and we have started investment in infrastructure as a very good initiative of smart cities that we are going to make. So that will change the entire dynamic of infrastructure in India. Financial inclusion, we need to include everyone, whether in rural area or underprivileged members of the society, to include them, and also for digital India. So we are doing and we need to work more on that. Plan to reduce the corporate tax from 30 to 25%, so which would be a very good thing. And if government is already working to take it to a level where the corporate tax is at par with other countries where ease of business is a big parameter. So that is all from my side. So let me summarize. We talked about business environment. What is business environment? And then we looked at the components of business environment, and within that it is external and internal. Within external, your macro and micro environment, and we talked about the case study as to more the top five destinations, and India is at number one. And then how India has reached that rank, and what all things India has done, and what all things India needs to do to improve it further. So if you have any questions, feel free to write to me at gsinghjanti@gmail.com, and we'll try to have few sessions wherein I can clear your doubts. But till then, please write to me, and within 48 hours, I'll try to respond back to you. Thank you very much, and have a great day, and see you soon with lesson 2. Bye for now.